Hey everyone, how's it going? Azren the Language Nerd here. Hope you're doing very, very well. I want to make a quick little video today talking about active versus passive language learning strategies. Often I find that a lot of people, whether it be people who are interested in language learning or even people who maybe aren't that interested but are learning a language for a different purpose, whether it be work purposes, academic purposes, whatever. I find that a lot of people, a good percentage of people, focus all of their energy, or a very big percentage of their energy, on active learning styles. For example, what are active learning styles? Well, active learning styles essentially are any kind of study strategy where your brain is focused on learning the language. This might be taking language classes. This might be something like watching a TV show and writing down a lot of the new words. This might be writing essays and having someone correct them. This might be all sorts of different things. Anything where your brain is focused on learning the language, that's what I would quantify or qualify as an active language learning strategy. And I believe, to be honest with you, I believe that these active learning strategies are amazing. I think they're really useful. I use a lot of them. Wow, that's a noisy car. I use them a lot, and I think there's tremendous value and usefulness to these active learning strategies. Now, here's the thing though. I equally believe that there is tremendous value in what I'm going to call in this video passive learning strategies. Let me give you an example. About 2 or 3 days ago, I organized a dinner in my city for people who are either learning Mandarin or who already speak Mandarin very well because it's their native tongue or their mother language. And so we had a decent amount of people. There's a lot of Mandarin being spoken. I'm speaking Mandarin. There's a lot of Mandarin around me. I'm talking to this girl beside me, and for whatever reason, I look across the table, and this dude across from me goes in Mandarin, "It was this long!" And he shows with his hands how long a certain object was. I noticed it unconsciously, turned back to my conversation, and kept going. Later, I was thinking to myself, randomly, I was like, I know in Mandarin how to say, this object is this long, or this small, or this tall, this big. And I was thinking to myself, how do I know that? Where did I learn that? Did someone teach that to me? And I couldn't quite put a finger on it. And then as I thought about it, I realized, oh yeah, I randomly saw the guy talk about whatever object being this long, and it stuck in my brain. And I thought, whoa, I wasn't trying to really remember it. I didn't write it down. I didn't really do anything. But my brain remembered. And then as I thought about it more and more, that's always been a major key, a really big key for all the languages I've learned. The number of things that I've learned unconsciously without necessarily making a massive conscious effort is crazy. It's just so many things like that. And it made me realize that, there's something here. Like, that's something that's important. And I don't, again, based on my experience, based on what I've been seeing, I get the feeling that most language learners, or at least many language learners, enough language learners for me to make this video, are not doing enough to be able to learn passively, or to be able to learn, let's call it automatically, and let your brain just kind of absorb stuff in and let it sink in without necessarily really focusing on it. And I guess what we can talk about in the last half of this video is the following. A couple of different thoughts I have, a couple of different strategies, a couple of different things in my brain to maybe help you to implement this strategy, to help you implement and basically watch this video and be able to start using and implementing passive language learning strategies into your language learning routine. I think one really big thing to keep in mind is if you want to just kind of naturally absorb information into your brain about another language, I think your brain needs to be in a relaxed state. You can't be really stressed out. You can't be really focused and like straining the brain. Think of like a sponge. If you squish a sponge and it's completely squashed, and you try to let it absorb water and you run it under a tap, it's not going to absorb a lot. It's only going to absorb the only time it's going to absorb is when the sponge is in its relaxed state, its like full size state. You stick it in water and then it can absorb a lot of different water. And actually, as a matter of fact, I don't even know if this is true, but mentally the imagery makes sense to me. I actually think that if you were to squish a sponge and really make it tense per se, and then stick it in water and let it go, I could for some reason imagine it filling up super duper fast. And I think this can be a good strategy we can use in language learning. And this is something I tend to do quite frequently, and I've done a lot. I will go through an intensive period where I'm mentally super duper focused on learning and jamming information into the brain, cramming a bunch, learning grammar, learning all these rules, basically tiring my brain out in certain ways, and it's kind of exhausting in a certain sense. And then what I do is I only study casually. I just listen to music. I will just hang out with some different people and listen to their conversations, watch some videos, and try and understand what I can. And I find that when I transition from that intensive period, and then I go into a less intense period where I'm just kind of casually studying, that's a good way. I find that my brain, for some reason, continues to significantly improve throughout my casual studies, for whatever reason, right after I did that intensive period. It's kind of like I did the intensive period, and my brain then starts to digest the information as I just kind of do casual studies afterwards. I think that's one way everybody watching this video can try and implement this passive learning into their arsenal, into their tool belt of skills. So do an intensive burst for 1 month, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever. And then do maybe, let's say, the equal amount of time, equal or even 1.5 times the time studying passively. Just watching music or watching quick videos and listening to music, maybe reviewing some notes now and then, listening to some podcast or simple things, right? Talking, texting with friends, nothing that's overly taxing for the brain. I think another thing that comes to mind here, and maybe we'll finish it off on this note, is I said this in my podcast. This is actually a different version of a podcast I made today, this video, but I think another thing to be thinking about is trying to learn another skill in the language that you're trying to learn. Because when you're trying to learn another skill, your brain is mostly focused on trying to learn the skill, and the language is just in the background. The language is the tool that's allowing you to learn that skill. So your mind is fully focused on learning the skill, and the language is just kind of there, and you'll, for some reason, I wish I was like a neuroscientist or something, but your brain will somehow just kind of absorb that information into the brain as you're focused on that skill. It's a really weird thing. So if there's any way you can incorporate that where you are like focused on another activity that incorporates the language that you're trying to learn, I think a lot of you are going to start to see some pretty significant progress. It's probably one of the big keys to helping you speak naturally and have the language come naturally to you instead of always being taxed and your brain being like, how do I do this, and struggling. I think it's a really big key. So anyway, let's wrap this video up here. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate that you watch all my videos and my Instagram and my Facebook and all of that. I think it's fantastic. I'm super grateful. And we will talk later, guys. Bye for now.